after 108 days, the United States and Iran may have finally agreed to a truce pact that pauses the war for 2 months. But with Donald Trump involved, it could still be a case of many a slip between the cup and the lip. The deal is yet to be signed. June 19th is the slated date, Switzerland the stated location, and Israel is already threatening to rain on the parade. Netanyahu has vowed that his military will not leave Lebanon, and Trump himself has already taken his first U-turn. Within hours of announcing the end of the American blockade of Iranian ports, Trump clarified that the blockade will continue till the deal is formally signed. Then there are the other sticking points, the final contours of dismantling Iran's nuclear program and Tehran's insistence on access to frozen assets worth $12 billion. Amidst the uncertainty, the whole world is watching with bated breath. Can this interim deal survive 60 days? Will the final agreement actually be sealed? And how long will it take for disrupted global supply chains, especially on oil, to recover? Well, joining me on the other side, Colonel Douglas MacGregor. Joining me tonight is Colonel MacGregor, a man who's known across the internet as somebody who has a critical understanding of what's going on in the Middle East and the West Asia conflict. Thank you very much. We're at the cusp of a peace deal being signed, possibly in Switzerland on the 19th of June. A watershed moment, many are saying, but many are also looking at this as a possible payout of $300 billion, reconstruction, etc., to Iran by the United States. And therefore, it's being called Trump buying peace with Iran. How do you look at this proposed peace deal?
Well, I think that we have to be very cautious at this point. I don't know that we can say with any certainty that there will be a peace agreement by the end of the week. There's a lot of time between today and Friday. The Israelis have largely rejected the terms that we have put forth. They have no interest in withdrawing from any of the territories they've conquered. They say they will not stop operations in Lebanon under any circumstances. Now, when you do look at the list of points, what you mentioned, the $300 billion in construction funds, $12 billion before Friday, $12 billion after Friday, and effectively a promise by the United States that it will largely disengage from the region, this reads more like a capitulation than it does a peace document per se. But I think President Trump is very concerned about the economic fallout. He's worried about the financial markets, and I think he very definitely wants an agreement. The problem is that Israel is not a party to this.
Yes, many reports have said that Netanyahu has proved to be difficult in getting this deal through. When you look at this deal so cautiously, do you think there is still possibility of a slip between the cup and the lip?
It's hard to tell at this stage. One of the things that many of us are concerned about is that if we are unable to persuade the Israelis to change their behavior, which seems almost a certainty at this point, that the war between Israel and Iran will not only go on, it will recommence. And if it does so, we may be dragged back into it. Now, that's not a certainty, but it seems like a high probability. So I don't think it's simply a question of Mr. Netanyahu being difficult. Remember, his agents in the United States, the billionaires that back the Jewish lobby, are still firmly in his camp. There's no pressure from them to reach an agreement.
Okay. But the draft memorandum reportedly includes lifting sanctions, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, releasing Iranian funds, limiting future U.S. military deployments, and committing to reconstruction efforts. All of these are possible clauses that we've heard from various sources on both sides. Do you think this is an equal deal, or willy-nilly is this the Americans admitting that they had bitten off more than they can chew, and it is advantage Iran at this point?
This is an admission of military defeat at the hands of Iran. There's no question about it. Military power should always be carefully considered in the context of any policy decisions. Unfortunately, there was very little consideration given to the military realities of the Persian Gulf, of Iran, and the nature of the topography and the terrain. As a result, we went into this unprepared for what we were being asked to do, and the U.S. military was effectively defeated by Iran. This is nothing that anyone wants to admit publicly, but you are absolutely correct. When you read these points, it's almost impossible to reach any other conclusion.
So how do you look at the fact that even though there is an agreement that the Straits of Hormuz will be open, it seems like the Iranian arrangements will prevail. Is that something that will bring more problems to the world, especially because the energy requirements of the world are met through this straits? And if it is the Iranian arrangement, then are we talking about tariffs that will be imposed? How do you see the Straits of Hormuz, the agreement, and the clauses relating to this? Who will have control? That is the big question.
Well, I'm not sure it's a question anymore as a result of the military outcome. It is clearly Iran. And from the very beginning, I have compared the outcome in the Dardanelles, that is the Bosphorus, during World War I, and then subsequently the signing of the Montreux Declaration in 1926 that gave the Turks complete control of the Dardanelles. Everyone agreed to it. And of course, in connection with that agreement, there were a set of conditions and expectations. The Turks have done an excellent job of managing the Strait. No one has complained about it. They've done a wonderful job. I don't see any evidence that the Iranians will not do an acceptable job of monitoring the Strait as well, and along with their partners in Oman. I think what you're seeing is a shift, a dramatic shift in power. The United States was the superpower just 30 some years ago. The United States is no longer the superpower it was. That's clear, that's obvious. Secondly, the United States and its population do not live in the Middle East. We live in the Western Hemisphere. Our interests in the Persian Gulf are quite limited. They always were. We were dragged into this mess largely by Israel and the various emirates who made the ill-fated decision to align themselves with Israel. Well, that's over. Those emirates are largely destroyed or in very poor shape. They recognize that we cannot protect them. We've recognized that we cannot protect them. And so they have to look for a different arrangement. Israel is the outlier. Israel is the spoiler, if you will. Israel has no interest in this agreement and sees its future tied to the inevitable destruction of Iran. I don't think it's going to get what it wants. In fact, I think the opposite is the case. But that is the Israeli position right now. And unless there is a dramatic change in the Israeli government and in its population, that is its electorate, then I expect the Israelis to stay with that position. They want Iran's destruction, its capitulation. What they're getting instead is the United States recognizing that it cannot compel Iran to submit, and Iran is victorious as a result.
So any agreement is going to be a battle of perception as well. Israel also knows that if in the last 3 months it hasn't been able to get a victory over Iran, if it hasn't been able to destroy Iran completely, alone it cannot do this. If it does not go by the peace deal or the exit clause that has been got by the United States of America, what are Israel's options? They have said they will continue, to pound Lebanon. But what is the end game? Where is the perception battle as far as Israel and the United States are concerned?
Well, you've raised a critical question. What everyone wants to know is whether or not we are going to continue unconditionally supporting Israel. If we are not going to unconditionally support Israel, if we in fact sign this agreement, it amounts to a promise to largely disengage from the Middle East. That means Israel would be on its own. If Israel is on its own, it has no chance of success whatsoever. It depends entirely on the United States, not only for most of its technology, but certainly for its ammunition and for funding and support. So the real question is, what are we going to do? Do we actually sign this document, agree to it, and then walk away? Or do we refuse to sign on the grounds that we are still committed to Israel and are willing to fight Israel's war as long as it takes? My suspicion is we're coming to the so-called fork in the road, if you will. We've got to go one way or the other. We can't do both.
So can Washington afford to lose the perception battle, the narrative war?
I think it's too late overseas. I think people are going to realize that we are not the power we were. That, as I said at the beginning, power in the world is shifting, and a great deal of power is shifting eastward, away from the West. Our withdrawal and departure from the Middle East is a major shift in that power, and it's unavoidable at this stage. Our resources are not limitless. Our military capability is not limitless. So that's irrefutable. However, at home, you may get a different perception here. First of all, most Americans are not interested in this war. The vast majority of Americans never supported it, did not want it. This war was declared and waged in isolation from the American people. And most Americans want to get back to business as usual. They're more concerned about the price of gasoline than they are about what happens in the Persian Gulf. They know there's a link. So if they think the president has withdrawn us on the grounds that he wants to reduce gas prices, most Americans will welcome that. They're not interested in being permanently involved and mired in a war in the Middle East, or for that matter, anywhere else.
Which is true for the rest of the world as well, because gas prices have impacted economies across the world. 10 years from now, how do you think history is going to judge the decisions on this war by the United States, the performance of Israel, and, of course, the situation on how Iran will be judged?
Well, Iran will be judged as having exercised great judgment and care with regard to the conduct of its military operation. The Iranians have always known what they wanted, and they have limited their goals carefully to ensure they could achieve what they wanted. Now they're going to get it. I think history will regard this event and our inevitable departure from the Middle East, in other words, our disengagement militarily, largely, as important as the British departure from India in 1947.
What are your bets on? By the end of the week, will we have a peace deal or not? What are the three big headlines that you would describe this peace deal with?
Oh, I'm not sure I want to do that. I think we're just simply going to have to wait and see. Plus the fact I'm not a betting man. So you got to find someone who will give you odds. I think there's a good chance that nothing happens. You could actually have an end to everything. We could still depart the region, disengage, without necessarily an agreement in place. That could happen. You could also have a different situation, one in which the pressure on President Trump to re-engage in the war against Iran will be overwhelming once the Israelis and the Iranians go back at it again. So then you could also get an agreement. It could be signed. And the question is, how long will it last? Can we keep up all the promises that we've made? Will we keep the promises we've made? What will Congress do? You know, the president, contrary to popular belief, is not an independent actor. Congress can intervene in this, and Congress is clearly in the Israeli camp. So I really don't want to give you a headline that says hopeful but skeptical, but I guess that's the way I'd put it.
Mr. Colonel MacGregor, thank you very much for joining me on the news hour tonight. Of course, it's a hope and a prayer and crossed fingers that we wait for the 19th of June and hope that peace will prevail for the betterment of the entire world. Thank you very much for joining.
Sure. Thank you.